Yo, what's going on, comic fans, and welcome back to Let's Talk Comics. Today we're going to be diving into and discussing one of, honestly, probably my opinion, the most brutal and terrifying and yet strangely fascinating villains that I've seen in the entirety of Invincible, or that I've seen in quite a while. Conquest. And at first, he really does just seem like, another sadistic, overpowered antagonist, but there is really just so much more to him than that raw destruction. He's not just your typical villain. And today we're going to be really just breaking down exactly why Conquest stands so far out and just stands so differently from everybody else. From his origins, kind of, to his philosophy and his lasting impact on Mark Grayson, specifically Invincible as a whole, we're covering it all. But with all that said, let's get into it. So, getting this started and getting this discussion started on why Conquest is so different from your average villain, we have to talk about the fact that he is a Viltrumite war machine. As he said by himself, like in his own words, he is a product of basically that pure Viltrumite ideology. He is a product of his own success. Him literally devastating so much is quite literally why he is just called Conquest. No name, no nothing. He is just Conquest. An unstoppable force of nature bred for war and destruction, basically. Like, he's not just a soldier. He's not just a soldier. He is war personified. Unlike Omni-Man, who, wrestled with his morality at some point, or Thragg, who played the long game, Conquest lives for battle. His entire existence is centered around fighting, and he embodies everything the Viltrumite Empire stands for in its purest form. And honestly, what makes him so terrifying is he doesn't just fight for strategy, for conquest, or for power. He fights quite literally just because he enjoys it. Like, boy is truly the biggest, Black Air Force energy activity personified kind of character that you'll ever see. He is a D1 crash out, and he is actively just throwing hands strictly for the love of the game. And honestly, if he met Battle Beast, that would be an interesting fight to see, just because they're both basically kind of have the same kind of personality. Like, he doesn't seek dominance in the, traditional sense. He seeks the thrill of combat, the rush of testing his limits, and, the pure, unfiltered, satisfaction of just destruction. And unlike many many villains who have their grand schemes or, tragic backstories or whatever, Conquest literally thrives on that chaos of battle, making him easily one of the most fearsome enemies that Mark has ever faced. And specifically talking about that, we have to discuss literally what makes him such a good and effective villain. Because we all know a good villain challenges their hero in ways that they aren't prepared for, and Conquest does that in the worst way possible. And I don't mean that in a bad way. He isn't just strong; he is relentless. Every time Mark faces him, Conquest pushes him past his limits, both physically and mentally. What makes him different from somebody like Thragg, Omni-Man, or whatever is that he doesn't try to manipulate or convert Mark. He literally just wants to break him. He is here quite literally just to, destroy, get the job done, and keep moving on. Conquest isn't trying to win Mark over to the Viltrumite cause. He doesn't care about Mark's potential, his moral struggles, or his personal growth. He exists solely to prove a point that Mark isn't as strong as he thinks, and that no amount of idealism is going to save him from the brutality of the universe. And at the end, raw strength always wins. And Conquest is the ultimate test of that, endurance, forcing Mark to, finally confront just how brutal his life as Invincible really is, and the exact kind of person that Mark is going to need to become. Because, when we think about Conquest as a character, he is honestly so much more interesting because he is a sadistic yet honest monster. And obviously what I mean by that is that there is literally no deception in Conquest. He doesn't pretend to be something that he's not. He openly revels in this violence, taking genuine pleasure from the suffering of others. But in a strange way, that makes him one of the most honest characters in Invincible. Unlike other villains, who would normally try to justify their actions with ideology or excuses, Conquest isn't hiding behind any false motives. He does this strictly, as I said, for the love of the game. He doesn't see himself as a hero. He doesn't need to. He is the embodiment of a simple, terrifying truth. Some people just love destruction, and that's what makes him so unsettling. He doesn't need that revenge, that redemption, or a master plan. He just needs a battlefield, and that is easily more than enough. And like we all know, most villains have something to lose, an empire, a reputation, or a cause. Conquest, he does not have any of that. He got nothing to lose. He doesn't care about ruling the Viltrumite Empire or like gaining more power, just proving himself. He already's done that. Like he is quite literally so scary to his own universe, specifically even the own Viltrumites, that every other Viltrumite that's still alive, all 37 of them or whatever, all fear him, all fear his existence because he is old. One, he is purely bred to fight. He doesn't need to prove himself. He's proven himself leagues upon leagues times over. And like we just see that he actively does just want to fight. He is the closest to a force of nature than a traditional, antagonist that we've really ever seen. More akin to somebody like Doomsday from Superman than Lex Luthor or whatever. And the scariest part is that there's no bargaining with him. There's no redemption, no whatever, no hidden depth that can make you feel sorry from him. He is just pure unbridled, chaos, like pure evil in not even like that kind of form. And in a world as complex as Invincible, where morality honestly is, often very gray because we see all the characters that exist, Conquest stands out as a very rare example of a black and white brutality. And yet, that's what makes him so terrifying. And honestly, what makes him even more terrifying is that he isn't just some mindless brute. He's experienced, intelligent, and he's completely in control of his actions. Obviously, he's a Viltrumite, and he is one of the oldest Viltrumites still around. We see how old he is, so we know he has years upon centuries of battle experience to just scroll from. And he doesn't just rage blindly. He calculates, toys with his enemies, and enjoys every second of it. He is the perfect storm of cunning and, carnage that we're going to be able to see, making him even more dangerous. And when we're talking about villains, we also obviously have to talk about their impact on the character that they're, fighting. And every encounter that we see Conquest have with Mark leaves a very lasting scar on Mark. And I'm not talking about physically. The first fight nearly kills him, so, there's the physical aspect. And the trauma from the battles that follow him are probably going to follow him for the rest of the series. No other villain pushes Mark to such close of an edge, physically, emotionally, or mentally. Conquest quite literally represents that, ultimate nightmare of what it means to be invincible. Unlike the other villains where Mark can reflect on their actions and find some deeper, meaning, there's not really much that you can try redeeming about Conquest. And this is one level that, really gonna be needing a lesson for survival, because Mark doesn't grow stronger because of a moral revelation or whatever. He grows stronger because he quite literally has to. I literally made a video talking about this on my other channel, just specifically talking about Mark's perspective about the crash out that he had when he had to deal with fighting Conquest, because there was literally nothing else that he could do. We know that Mark, throughout this entire show of Invincible, has always just been holding back. The reason why Nolan and everybody else says that the reason why all the other Viltrumites are going in so much stronger than Mark is because he's always holding himself back, just because he doesn't want to deal with the destruction or whatever, do all the damage and all the chaos. As soon as he has to fight Conquest, he quite literally has to be stripped away of all of those idealistic notions of heroism, and that really just forces Mark to feel and face the brutal reality of his own role as Invincible. In a way, Conquest is one of the most defining villains of Mark's journey, because after facing him, Mark can't you can't really ever be the same again. Mark almost loses his brother. He almost loses Adam Eve, literally the woman that he loves, but quite literally the love of his life. And we see just the entire debacle that is going through Mark at that exact point in time. Him holding back is quite literally about to cost him everything. And that entire impact that he has leading to get to Mark, fully growing and actively finally understanding, okay, we got to do something. We got to move. There's things that need to be done. Let's finally stop playing around and get this mode in. Let's lock in real quick. And that is quite possibly the best thing that we could have seen, and why Conquest literally stands so far away from the rest. So, in general, Conquest is like not just another generic muscle-bound villain. Absolutely not. Like, he just can't be. He is one of the most effective antagonists in Invincible because he represents something most villains don't. Pure, unfiltered destruction. He doesn't need grand plan or tragic past, or his existence alone is enough to fall into the foundation of the eye of the story. And he's a rare villain who doesn't just threaten what he becomes something. He threatens their entire purpose and truly gets to them on a mental level. But let me know what swallows his hero's Conquest deserve, or what do you know for more credit as just doing this? He's just another overpowered mountain. And let me tell you, let's talk about down in the comments. And don't what do you like? Subscribe to the channel. Daredevil, Thragg, you guys see the more comic break dives, or let me know down any kind of don't forget to leave a like video, the idea like that I might end up thinking of. But until next time, like this, stay invincible, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.